coming to get you, Barbara.
It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder. The unburied dead are coming back to life, seeking human victims.
Welcome to a podcast from beneath. You may have seen our guest in the mini project Mind of Mencia, and you can see her in Eternal Code and the upcoming film Realm of Shadows. Please welcome Vida Ghaffari.
Vida Ghaffari, yes!
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a highlight of my day, talking to other people.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
It's a highlight of our day too. We love talking to different people and hearing their stories and everything. So,
yeah. So we're just going to get this started. How did you get started in acting and directing?
I wish I was a director. I aspired to be a director. Who knows after this quarantine what's going to happen? Thank you for putting it out there. I started acting because I was initially a journalist, and that led to voiceover because I would voice a lot of the promos that we did. I'm of Persian heritage, and I was a reporter for Persian TV stations, and they would have me voice the promos in English and Farsi because I was one of the few native English speakers there. These were all non-religious, non-political stations out here and also back east. And one of the engineers took a real shine to me, and he's like, why don't I record some of your promos? And, I know someone who is casting something. I'll, refer him to you. And that never happens. Like, I want to say, and I don't want to sound like a weathered person, but in LA, one of the terms I use is scam city. Everybody's always trying to put the wool over somebody's eyes. So I was very lucky to find out later on that a lot of people I know, they didn't get people to automatically do for them. They would pay with the whole cottage industry, they pay, $500 to $1,000, maybe $2,000 now. So basically I got a free demo reel, and then the guy referred me to work. He didn't charge me a penny. It led to more and more work. And then eventually I got an agent and voiced over, and I thought, you know what, I've always wanted to do on camera. So I also did on camera. I would play a lot of journalists initially because I was a journalist. So that kind of led into the acting, and I, took classes, studied. I minored in theater in college and journalism, and here I am now. I will say our times have really changed. If I was to get in the industry now, as opposed to, back in the day, it's totally different with the self-taping, especially considering all what's going on in the world. It's really changed.
So now is it your father is a NASA scientist?
My dad was a NASA scientist, yeah.
Okay, so Was he supportive of you being an actress, or did he want you to?
No, my dad wanted me to be a NASA scientist, and I was like, oh. Like, you have to go to space camp. I'll get you into space camp. It was like being the daughter of like a Steven Spielberg person and being in show business. I'm sure it would have been much easier for me to be a NASA scientist. But yeah, he was going to get me into space camp. I had to go to math camp every summer. But I think, because I've had time to reflect, because, given the situation we're all in, I think my dad really wanted it for me. And I think he just nudged me so hard. And I think if he didn't nudge, maybe the interest would be there. Because, yeah, I'm really into space and science, and not like he is, not from an intellectual kind of way, more in like a sci-fi way. But I think for me, like, it was, he wanted me to be like he's like, well, you should do something with numbers. He loved numbers. So he's like, why don't you study economics? I have a friend at the World Bank, and that just was not my deal. Like, I like that there were get-togethers at the World Bank, and I love meeting people. It was very diverse. It was like its own little small world ride at Disneyland, or it was like very diverse. I love the diversity of it. I loved interacting with people. I guess that's the journalist in me, but it just wasn't my field. I mean, maybe if I was in economics, things would be different. I could, predict bad things. It's funny because growing up, I knew the guy who's Dr. Doom. You know that guy, Dr. Doom? He's a famous economist. Yeah. He predicted all the bad, scary things. And I knew people like that, but it just wasn't my thing. Like, he's a very numerical guy, and I'm a woman of words. But I will say that it was quite the experience for me. I played a scientist in Harvey Wallen's film. I believe you guys interviewed him, Eternal Code. And it was just an amazing experience. And I got worldwide coverage, especially because my dad was so famous in our culture and, you know, in Iran. And scientists in the Middle East, it's like being, you know, Michael Jordan or, you know, Kobe Bryant. They're revered in the Middle East, scientists, mathematicians, professors. So that was like front page news. It was in all these magazines. I was playing a scientist, but, you know, I like to say that my dad worked for good, and I guess my scientist is, you know, a bit of a rogue scientist. But I feel eternally grateful to Harley Wallen for that, because him and his lovely wife, Katie, they gave me an amazing opportunity. And after that, I feel like I got closer to my niche. I played a lot more intellectual women. And, you know, you're not just the girlfriend, you're like an intellectual girlfriend. So that really opened the doors. I played a scientist another time. I played a police officer after that. Just very empowered women after that. Just, it became an interesting niche. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, were you worried
awesome.
about getting typecast as scientist for the rest of your career, or?
It's interesting. I don't think I'm typecast as a scientist, but I will say that I'm a much more powerful woman now. I don't know if that comes with age or experience or what have you, but it's led to roles where I'm like a boss lady. So it's like a different. I will say this: I used to do improv, a lot of improv. I studied at UCB. It was Upright Citizens Brigade. It was created by Amy Poehler, and there's a great.
I love that show.
I love that whole UCB vibe. And they always said in class, you're either a pirate or a robot improviser. And if you're a robot, you like adhere to the rules. It's almost like, I don't know if how familiar you are with improv, but it's like high status, low status. So like when I was younger, I feel like as an actor, like the characters I played was like low status. I would play like stereotypical Middle Eastern women. You know, they didn't have a lot of the lines would get cut. Let's be honest. They're used to being covered. Or I was somebody's girlfriend, or it felt like a stock character. But I feel like with this Eternal Code, I became like a high status. Instead of being a robot where I was reactive, like an improv, I was like more proactive. So I think, again, it's a thing with life. It's a thing with age. It's a thing with Jungian archetypes. I feel like after that, it's just, those roles just gravitated to me more. Not so much a scientist, but just a powerful, centered being. So that was an interesting result of that. It was a wonderful experience. I got to, you know, he based it on an article he read where they were, without giving too much of the story away, where it was like a radical procedure, and you could just change people, you know, like I could go into somebody else's body with my mind, with my soul. So that's an interesting thing. And what I really liked about the way that Harley looked at it is he could have just made this movie, you know, this is the outcome of the movie, good guy, good girl, bad girl, boy meets girl, what have yous. But it was a very sociological and economic way of looking at it. Like, you know, is this something for the 1%? Is this going to take advantage of, you know, the have-nots? It was very reflective of the society we're in. And I think it takes somewhat of a different intellectual caliber. It was a sci-fi movie. It was an action movie. It was a thriller movie. But there was really a different element to it this time in terms of like caste systems in our modern society. So that was something that I really enjoyed. Working with Richard Tyson was a tremendous experience. Scout Taylor Compton is amazing. Billy Worth was phenomenal. Everybody was great. I got to work with someone I've worked with before, legendary action star Mel Novak from Bruce Lee's Game of Death. And it's always a learning experience when working with Mel. So I was just surrounded by great people. Katie, of course, Katie Wallen was amazing. Harley was a fabulous actor, writer, director, just very, very talented people. And the folks in Michigan, the cast and crew, awesome people.
Last night I watched Holy Terror.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was just as a movie, that was a really interesting take on, you know, possession or, you know, exorcism. The end of that movie was really out there as far as like the exorcism. What was it like working on that film?
You know, I'm going to tell you something. We filmed this in a church, and it was around the holiday season. Very hard to get a church.
Oh, yeah.
And given the subject nature, these were very, very religious people. It wasn't your typical church. It was a very religious, like a deeply religious church. So we couldn't really tell them much about the story. I couldn't say that I'm some woman getting exercise. So they're like, they had their choir practice. And then there were these ladies, I guess, part of the church group. They were like making crafts upstairs. So my character's in the basement getting exercise. I've got green splooge, you know, from the makeup artist all over my face. So I think a lot of the fear was that we get caught, that this was a movie about an exorcism. We kind of have to say, oh, you know, this is about the priest. And the priest, it was a great cast. Christine DeBelle was a nun. Again, Mel Novak. Christine DeBelle is from Meatballs, and she was a tremendous actress. And Mel Novak, of course, again, he was the priest that, you know, had a lot of issues. So they're like, yeah, this is a priest who's at a crossroads in his life. Little did they know that some woman is getting exercised in the basement. That woman would be. But I'm glad that I was with Mel Novak on that movie, because I tell you, it was really rough and tumble. And because he has so much experience, not just as an actor, in stunts, it was very great having him around to protect me from being injured. So it was like I got a twofer. It was, you know, working with a great actor, and, you know, he's a minister. So it was great to see him as a priest, because, you know, he really knows the Bible. He's not just an actor,
Wow.
you know, pretending he knows the Bible. You're with a spiritual person. So I, you know, not to get all hippy dippy about it, but I felt a certain energy there with him, and the, you know, and the crew that we were allowed to have there. And then the fact that I was in a church basement, I was getting exercised. It was really trippy. And it was a very creepy basement. I think it was probably one of, like, and there aren't a lot of basements in Southern California. So like the fact that we found the basement, it was in a church. So that was like a whole other twofer. And the energy in that church was just very strong. And it was just wild, because like later on we were doing like, when they were prepping for other scenes, you know, they were having their rehearsal after I was exercised. They were having like this, so we heard like these angelic voices singing. So I thought it was so funny. We're doing a movie about exorcism and trying to find your way, and there's like a church choir going on.
Right.
Never been for the wiser. I mean, maybe if they tune into this interview, they'll find out. But that's like my strongest memory when it comes to Holy Terror. It's like filming it in that church. I mean, who knew I was in that church? It was very creepy, that basement, and very dark and dank. And I'm glad that I felt I was protected, you know, not just because Mel's a religious person, but I was protected from getting severely injured. Right. So we kind of had to like improvise, because what are they going to do? They're going to roll a bed in there. So I was basically exercised on the ground. So there you have it, Holy Terror.
I was doing a little research on you as well, and I ran across something. You did a documentary, or you were a part of a documentary for Bob Baker.
Yes, this was many years ago.
Oh man, yeah, I was looking into that. I'm like, oh, he did a bunch of stuff, and I like the marionette puppets. I love stuff like that.
I love this. You know, the most traumatic thing about everything was that, I don't know how familiar you are with Bob Baker, but he was in a location in downtown LA that has become very pricey and very trendy. And all the hipsters moved in, which I guess is fine. But the problem is that it was after we worked on the project, there was a big fear that they were going to lose the theater. And, you know, lots of issues came up. It was like in an interesting location. And it was like at the corner of all these places in downtown. And like I said, there was like luxury condos across the street. And it was a very precarious situation they're in. And I think, as wonderful as it is now, of course, you know, the man has died and it's not the same as it was, but what an amazing person. I remember when we went there, and there was like a little party room, and afterwards we had a little wrap party, and the little ice cream that they would serve the kids, like the, what is it called? Like the Neapolitan, where it's like strawberry chocolate. So like they served it to us. It was cute. And he had just this way of like relating to everybody. He was like I think he was a true representative of Los Angeles. I think he was part Native American. He even had like Armenian roots. He had like, you know, European roots. And like, he was telling me about like an Armenian relative, I guess, cause I'm Persian, but like, he's like one of those people that like relates to everybody. A little bit like our Mayor Garcetti, cause he's part Latino, he's part Eastern European Jewish. He was like a microcosm of Los Angeles. It was like I got to feel every essence of Los Angeles. It was kind of nice, you know. He was a very worldly man, and he worked on so many incredible movies.
Oh yeah, I think I read he was proud because a lot of his stuff, some of them were in a Star is Born, I think Star Trek episode. What always messes up, Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, I think it is. Yeah, there you go. So no, I want to see this documentary because I like watching stuff like that. And I saw that, you had been a part of this. I'm like, man, I never heard of that documentary. And just looking back on it, you're like, you've seen his work. Even though you don't know the man's name, you've seen what he's done.
Yes. And he had such an influence. I think till the end of his life, he was on all these committees. Whenever they wanted to put puppets in movies at the DGA or the Writers Guild or any of the unions, like he was very anti-Team America because he didn't think puppets should be used for that purpose.
Yeah.
It was very raunchy, the scenes. One particular scene that was very anti that because he's like, what if a child sees that? Children love puppets. What if the wrong person sees that? He was just very concerned. He had a certain respect, I think, for his craft and for the puppets. So that's that. But yeah, that was a tremendous experience. That was many years ago, but yeah, it was wonderful.
Now I think you've worked with someone that Mr. Poe recently ran into, and that's Rickey Stevens.
Oh, Rickey Stevens is lovely.
Yeah.
I've worked with her a number of times, most recently on Los Angeles Shark Attack with her, with again, Mr. Novak, Maria Olsen, who's an incredible actress. I Spit on Your Grave, Deja Vu. She was in that film, and it was a wonderful cast I worked on for LA Shark Attack. That's a Dustin Ferguson film. Dustin is a very talented, prolific filmmaker. He's in his 30s, and he's done, 70 movies?
Oh, yeah. He's done a lot. Yes, he has.
Very artistic.
And so, were you in one? I'm sorry. Were you in one of the Meathook movies? I know he's. Those are his movies, right?
Yes, I was in Meathook Massacre. Well, they don't call it 5, but it was like 5. It was Meathook Massacre, the final chapter.
Oh, okay.
And I played Samantha. I played the sister of the gal that was being pursued by Bubba, who was the Meathook guy. Jason Langford, I believe is his name. He played Bubba. He even has his own action figure.
Yeah, I saw that. They were going crazy. I mean, those things were selling out, so good for them.
Yeah, I'm so excited for them. And he was a great Bubba, and Dustin is incredible, and I was honored to be a part of that. And franchises are so powerful in the horror genre.
Yeah, they are.
So many people gravitate to them. People always ask me about that movie and what it was like to work on that franchise. And, it aired on television. It had a premiere on television, and it was wonderful. After Hours Cinema premiered it, I believe, or they premiered Moon of the Blood Beast. Both of them had TV premieres.
So are you a big fan of horror, or do you like watching horror movies, or?
It's funny. I'm from DC, and when I think of DC, I always think of The Exorcist steps and The Exorcist.
Oh, heck yeah. Awesome movie.
Believe it or not, as a kid, that was one of the first movies I watched. And I know a lot of people that went to Georgetown, and they actually knew the guy that was the minister that it was based on. So I thought that was very interesting. It's sort of based on a true story.
Right.
So and I finally went up and down the stairs. And I will say I like how the genre treats women, because I feel like in horror, as much as women are, damsel by the train tracks or they get bludgeoned, there's often very powerful women in Hollywood in the horror genre. I feel like it's opposed to most comedies and dramas. There's a lot of women that are leads. There's a lot of women that kick butt. I mean, you mentioned Rickey Stevens. There's so many amazing horror scream queens, and there's a lot of empowerment, I feel like, in the genre. I think maybe there's a little more wiggle room, and women can kind of propel forward.
Well, they're always the final girl, so they're always the ones that survive. You never have the final guy.
Yeah. The guys end up dying.
The final guy. Interesting way of putting it. Yeah, that's true.
One of my favorite movies, and speaking of like women being empowered, and I feel like this movie doesn't get a lot of credit. It's You're Next. I mean, that movie, that the final girl, if you want to call her that, I mean, she was like the hero of it. She knew how to set traps and everything. Have you ever seen? I don't know if you ever seen it, but You're Next. That's a really good one.
Oh, well, now that there's time, I should probably peruse it. I've been
I know there's no. there's a lot of stuff, and you know, I know Carey and myself, we try to watch. I mean, there's just so much stuff, and we try to watch everything we can, and it's just there's so much. And then of course, you know, like you said, that documentary is, you know, many years old, but I mean, I hadn't got to it yet, so I mean, I do plan on watching it now, but.
If I can finagle a copy for you, I think the filmmakers had
I would
like
love it.
issues amongst themselves, but let me see if I can finagle a copy for you.
Yeah, I mean
Very
that
cool.
would be fantastic. I'm very interested in that because I've always liked marionette puppets and all that.
I wish you could have met him when he was alive. He loved those puppets so much. I'm
Oh
so glad
man,
he was a theater.
yeah.
Very elaborate costumes on those puppets. I might add.
It takes talent. I mean, to make a little costume like that and patience. I think.
He trained like inner city kids. Like he could have gone all corporate with it, but he trained like inner city kids to be puppeteers. Like
Wow.
they're not people of privilege. So he was a really good person. He was a very soulful individual. So yeah, I mean, it's a shame that he's gone, but maybe the Los Angeles of days of yore was more of his Los Angeles.
Yeah. For
So
sure.
out of all of your work, what was your favorite project that you worked on?
Gosh, I have so many memories of like so many wonderful projects. I will say that, you know, once again, Eternal Code, I really hold it close to my heart because that was kind of a game changer for me in terms of, you know, not just like, you know, working more, but it was like almost like it was a great way to like, it was a great transition to make, if you will. Like it really opened doors for me. And it was much like after playing such a smart woman, like it was nice to wear a lab coat again. Like I wore one again in Los Angeles Shark Attack. It was nice to be like that kind of a person, you know. And I remember when we were working on the movie, I was like, you know, maybe I should pull out some of my dad's like old magazines and books and stuff, even though it was more like aerospace and stuff. It was like I was like, you know, almost becoming smart. So it was a wonderful experience. Not thinking of like the zinger line that you have to deliver in a comedy. You're not thinking of, you know, getting bludgeoned, which could happen. But I mean, you know, it's a different kind of intellectualization. So it was nice. And I mean, Richard Tyson's an amazing actor. You know, he was in Kindergarten Cop, Black Hawk Down, all these movies I adored. And in between takes, he would recite Shakespearean sonnets. Yes. He's a classically trained actor. He has a MFA from Columbia University. So you can't really top that. You know, someone reciting Shakespeare to you and the rest of the crew in between takes, you know, verbatim. It was quite a nice experience. So it was wonderful.
If you could, let's say you had an upcoming film and you were allowed to pick the director and your co-star, who would it be?
I've worked with so many wonderful people. Well, you know, I love working with all of them. Dustin Harley, which I will be. I mean, I was supposed to be doing a film with Dustin, but that got postponed. I'd love to work with Dustin and Harley again, which I am. I've loved to work with some of the people I've worked with, which I will. Of course, everybody has a list of people, the dream people they'd love to work with, which I do. But that's just so many. I could be on this podcast until, you know, when they find the cure for this virus and the vaccine. So I don't want to keep here until 2020, but I will say I'm working on some great projects in the future. There's a wonderful film of Harley's that I'm working on. I'm very excited about that. It's a great cast. It was featured in Deadline. Just a wonderful movie I'm very excited about that he's got going on. And it was, like I said, it was featured in Deadline. We have Sean Whalen, who is a renowned actor starring in, it's a vampire thriller. It's called Beneath Us All. It's a great cast. And he is just a great actor. I've always wanted to work with him. He was in Never Been Kissed and tons of other movies. Once again, we have Scream Queen Maria Olsen joining us. Jan Birch, who is a frequent collaborator of Harley's. He's from Wes Craven's The People Under the Stairs. The lovely Katie Wallen, of course. Very excited about that one. And also just working on some other films. I was supposed to be shooting with people that I've wanted to work with for eons. Talk about Scream Queen. I was just supposed to shoot Hell of the Screaming Undead. It's a Dustin Ferguson film with Lynn Lowry, who is from The Crazies, of course. Amazing, legendary horror scream queen. I'm a big fan of Lynn's. She's incredible. I was supposed to be shooting that in late March with Jasper Cole, who is a renowned actor. He's a legendary villain in his own right, and he's been on Brooklyn Nine-Nine and American Horror Story. Is just a very prolific actor, great cast. Also Mike Ferguson from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Just a really, really amazing cast, and Jen Nangle from the Mavlovia series. So that's just been pushed back, I believe, till late April. Well, now it's looking like May. So I'm excited to do that film. And Dustin is very wise about horror. He's very well read. He's seen everything. And might I add, between him and my wonderful representative, Joe Williamson, who referred me to your wonderful show, between the two of them, they're like their own Jeopardy of horror. So they've seen everything, read everything. In between the two of them, it's wonderful because they really know their horror. And Joe is also a producer on this film. So I feel like I knew a lot about horror, but it wasn't until working with Joe. Like, what I really like about him is he's like, when I did Eternal Code, he's like, you should watch Lady Frankenstein.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
never heard of this movie, like Lady Frankenstein. And he's like, it's this famous Italian actress. Of course, the voices were dubbed. I'm like, because, you know, it's like the Bruce Lee voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I figured out, I'm like, wait a second, this woman probably doesn't know a lick of English. But it was a wonderful movie. I really enjoyed it. So they turned me on to these movies that I would have never have known about. I'm sure you guys know about these movies, but wow, later. Talk about an empowered woman in horror back in the day.
Yeah, no, I know, like I said, we try to watch everything and something new pops up. I'm like, how did I miss this? You know, it's just like.
Now, there was another movie that I seen that you're on your IMDb that's, I guess, going to be produced. And it's a movie that we had got behind, Ed and the Living Dead.
Yes,
is that still?
I guess it's going to be happening. You know, they postponed it, and many things have been postponed. But great people involved with that. Brandy and Tim are very creative, and I always wanted to do. Well, I'm doing period pieces, but I love like Hollywood of the 1930s and 40s, and it's very funny. I mean, I'm barefaced right now, but I met someone that was Judy. God, she was like the makeup artist for all these famous people like Judy Garland. He was.
Wow.
And he's like, you remind me of Judy. And it was an exhibit for old Hollywood at the Max Factor Museum. I'm like, who's Judy? And then he pointed to like the display. It's like, Judy Garland. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And of course he went to Renee Zellweger, more power to her. But he's like, you remind me so much of Judy. He's like, you were born in the wrong era. And there are these two sisters. They're like famous twins in the 1930s or 40s. I think one of them was in the Black Tattoo, or they were like really famous Italian American sisters. And he's like, you're so much like those two sisters. And that happened to me another time. I was walking down the street in Beverly Hills, and this old lady comes out of a liquor store. I wish I remembered their names. They were very famous actresses in the 40s. And she's like, I was their makeup lady. I mean, God knows how old this lady was.
Oh, wow.
I was walking out of a hair salon. I was like in full hair and makeup. And she's like, you're just like these sisters. You should have been born in the 1930s and 40s. Yeah. So when Ed and the Living Dead came along, I play Victoria Crane. If you're involved with that movie, I'm sure you know. And she's like I think she was like a former like A-list actress, and she's having to do these movies, and she's really snotty about it. And she's a real attitude. You know how they kind of talk like radio announcers in the 1940s, more so the men than the women. Like they talk a certain way and they carry themselves a certain way. I had a blast doing that audition. I wore one of my mom's vintage suits. Like it was like a skirt suit. Mm-hmm. And I had like it was like a fake fur collar, and I like curled my hair, and I was just like so obnoxious, and I loved doing it. It was so much fun. I had so much fun auditioning for that film that when it happens, and once again, the lovely Maria Olsen is in that one too. I can't wait for that to happen. And all the actors have that feel of like a bygone era. Even the ones that are like modern and cool and tatted, like even those chicks have like that Betty Page vibe. So I think they did a really cool job, and you know, I hope it happens. I'd love to be Victoria Crane. So,
Yeah.
And I always think of those actresses, like what happened to them, like the ones that were like really famous, and then they had to, later on they had to do these movies, and they were like, they thought they were above it. And I guess I was based on a real character. I mean, Ed Wood is a real character.
Right.
I just wonder which actress maybe you guys would know more than I would, that I was.
No. No, I don't. I know I don't.
I think it was an amalgam of a bunch of actresses, actually.
It could.
probably.
My dad was on a plane. I had a much older father. My dad was on a plane years ago with Ava Gardner, and he smelled alcohol. And I hate to say bad things about Ava Gardner, but I think this character is probably, I didn't really get to develop the character. It hasn't happened yet, but I was going to kind of play it off on that, the clothes would be like a little bit shoddy, or, it was like someone from like a bygone era trying to reclaim their past. It was a very, because, you do research as an actor, but I think that one would have been a very interesting, path that she was taking, that she had to do this movie. And I think it was even an audition. I'm here with a bunch of amateurs. And, why have I reduced myself to this? Or what's the way they kind of talk? Is they talk in a certain breathy kind of way, and it's kind of fast talking. So it was kind of like a Dragnet episode. I love that kind of stuff. I hope to do more.
That sounds like a fun. Like I really hope they get to make that one, because that sounds. Even when I first heard about it, I was like, this, I'm sold.
Me too. And sometimes, like when I read for different roles, or I put myself on tape for different roles, like usually they can give you all the notes in the world, but from what I read, what I had, it was just so well written. It was such a sign of the times that they were in. There was lots of dialogue in like snippet form, like I was especially very snippety, and I guess the guy playing Ed Wood was Ed Wood. So it's a lot of whippy repartee in between it being a horror film. So I thought that was very cool and clever. So, I tip my hat to them. So yeah, that's hopefully coming. I'm going to get my mom's vintage wardrobe ready for that one.
There you go. So do you like working on independent features more than, I know you're on some TV shows that we could consider Hollywood. Which one do you like better?
It's just a different vibe. I think just to do one thing in TV takes forever. And there's a lot of people that you have to please, especially at the network level. And you sense that as an actor, like everybody is just very concerned. And you have to take like all sorts of pictures and in wardrobe, to satisfy everybody, the network, everybody, the production company. There's a lot of money involved. In the indie world, I feel like there's a more creative freedom. I feel like I said before, this, especially in horror, it's more empowering for women, definitely. Much stronger characterizations, much more powerful, much more well-developed stories, because it's a feature film as opposed to episodic television, where there's usually a large ensemble cast. I mean, TV is wonderful. I'm not going to lie, the food is amazing. Get out the elastic waistbands. It's incredible food. Especially when you're on a studio lot, you have, your own dressing room or your own trailer. It's like, it's like Little Princess. But I will say that the indie experience, and it's like more of a familial thing, because it's like a family working together. You really get to know people. You're under all sorts of conditions, being it a time crunch or a money crunch, or, weather conditions or life conditions. It's just a different, it's a whole different, can of worms working on a film set than on television. I mean, television is quite nice for the wallet, but films are very fulfilling in an artistic way.
Every time I hear craft services, I just imagine cheese sandwiches and juice boxes.
I will tell you, there's like smoothie bars, there's crepe stations. I mean, it depends on what it is, but it I will say, it's not just like, grilled cheese sandwiches. It's like gourmet grilled cheese sandwiches, something that costs you like $20,
Oh, yikes.
Nice.
It's like really accountable. It's free because it's craft service, but like really accountable, really accommodating people. And, you get like basil, fresh basil, really highfalutin. So yeah, I mean,
Now I want to be an extra on some movies just for the food.
Oh, there you go. You want, all the amazing food you want. But then you would probably enjoy it, whereas I'm like, oh, I don't want to spill it on my wardrobe. They want to keep me in my wardrobe, or oh, I don't want to ruin my makeup.
Yeah.
Enjoy it for what it is. Maybe the last day you can when you're, back in your sweats or whatever.
Mr. Poe, you got anything else?
No, I mean, it's just awesome to talk to you. Taking time to come talk to little old us is just awesome. There's some stuff we need to watch that, you've been in, especially, like I said, that documentary, I want to watch that. And I know you got some other projects. Hopefully those kick off soon. All this craziness that is, what we live in today will go and things can start, moving forward again. So, no, I will
say all the communities that I'm in, now we're all on social media. People are jonesing to work. I'm just trying to look at this positively. People
yes.
are being people are doing all sorts of things, and I think we're probably going to come hopefully back stronger, and here's hoping for many miracles. But I will say I would love it if people would check out Eternal Code. It's on DVD, it's on Amazon Prime, it's
definitely
check out Eternal Code. It's on Vudu, I believe. It's all over the place. Also, I'm going to make this really short, but I mentioned the film that I was going to be in, Hell of the Screaming Dead. I'm going to be working on that soon. Realm of Shadows is a wonderful film. I get to star with somebody I'm a huge fan of, Tony Todd, the Candyman franchise, Final Destination franchise. And a great up-and-coming star, Jimmy Drain from Shoot from the Hip is in that as well. And I get to be the boss lady. I get to play the alluring and seductive Cassandra. So I'm very excited. I can't reveal too much about that character, but I'm a boss, badass babe in that one. And I'm very excited about that one. And also, recently, this past winter, we had the premiere of Los Angeles Shark Attack. And also we'll be in a film called Miranda Vale that should be coming out, hopefully, sometime this summer or fall.
Very cool. And I'll just, where can they find you on the internet? Do you have social media you want to shout out?
I sure do. It's my name. It's Vida Ghaffari, Vida Ghaff like Frank, ARI on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can also find me under So Very Vida on Facebook. And I must say, it was such an honor to be on your show. You guys made my day and my week and my month. And thank you so much for checking out my films. And thank you so much for supporting the indie world. Thank you so much, fellas. It's been an honor.
Thank you for coming on our show. This was great. It was fun talking with you. And hopefully, whenever stuff starts coming out, we can have you back on.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Thanks again.
Thank you. It was awesome to have you on here, and especially sharing the stories and everything. I love hearing about that stuff. So I wish you all the luck, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of your stuff.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, fellas. Take care. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Coming to get you, Barbara.
It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder. The unburied dead are coming back to